Hello everybody, here we are today. We're continuing on with our playoff previews as we are covering the coveted Boston Bruins versus Toronto Maple Leafs series. But before we start with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So of course we have to start with how we got here. The Bruins were able to put together a really good year despite the fact that they lost Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. Now this team was able to nearly win the Atlantic Division and were in a spot to be able to do so until their final loss of the season in Game 82 against the Ottawa Senators. Florida of course would win their final game to win the division title, but still all around another very successful year after winning the President's Trophy. Toronto, meanwhile, put together a nice season of their own. It wasn't nearly as dominant of a year for them as it was for the Bruins. The Maple Leafs weren't able to crack 50 wins, but you have to keep in mind the fact that they were a team that battled a lot of injuries this season, and they were still far from being a bad side. They cracked the 100-point mark yet again and are a team looking to make moves in the playoffs. Now, these two teams will face off in the postseason for the first time since 2019. So what are some storylines to watch out for? So the first one is going to be Auston Matthews. I know that's a generic thing, but this is a player that nearly scored 70 goals, the most goals by a player in multiple decades, longer than I've been alive. He is a guy that's made the Toronto goalies probably happy that he is not playing against them and playing for them instead. He has got a big task in front of him trying to beat the Bruins. This is a player that's been able to win the Rocket on multiple occasions. However, he only has 22 goals in 50 career playoff games, which is a big talking point for a player like him. The points has been nearly able to average a goal per game, and now this is going to be ratcheted up, of course, with an original 6 clash in the first round. Pair that with the fact that he went goalless in the 5-game series against the Florida Panthers in the second round of the playoffs last year, and you know you have a recipe for the Toronto media to have a field day with that, as well as Boston media in the NHL. But I have to go on the flip side and say this is a player that scored 50 even strength goals, over 50, and nearly 20 power play goals. An incredible season from him. You know that he's going to be able to score from a variety of areas. A player that is going to be a problem for Boston. You know that he's going to be able to score from down low, which is something Boston's been able to defend pretty well this season. But he could be the guy that just is the difference maker in the series, where he's able to get down on the crease and get some goals that are either good or they're just lucky goals if you get a tip in or just a weird bounce. Those are the things you got to watch out for in the series, as well as the fact that he can score from anywhere. He's taken nearly 700 shots on the season, so you know he's going to have no problem trying to fire the puck in any direction of the net. That is just a given. Now, I will say a lot of his shots come from below the circles, face-off circles. That's not really too surprising, but you just realize that the very, very few amount of goals that he had this year were from, near the blue line. I believe 3 or 4. You know where they're probably going to be coming from. You just know that it could be left, right, center, even near behind. I guess at this point, the Bruins are going to have a tough time dealing with this. The great news is, though, he's not an incredibly fast player. The bad news is he's somebody that if he gets settled into your zone, he's going to be able to just have a field day. Boston knows that they're going to have to make sure that Toronto doesn't get settled in. They don't get a lot of offensive zone time, because if they start stringing together passes and Matthews gets a hold of one, it's probably going to end in a goal. Now, the second talking point is, can the Bruins benefit on the power play? Boston only has one player with double-digit goal total on the man advantage this season, and the Bruins, for their part, have not had a bad power play. The Leafs, on the other hand, have kind of had a leaky PK. It isn't a deal where everything is cut and dry, but Boston could be looking at this and saying, we have an advantage here. We could press it and try to go out there and get some early leads, or just be able to stay in games, or even take advantage of these in late game situations if Toronto takes bad penalties. Now, the great news for the Leafs, if you are a Toronto fan, is the fact that they've been getting better over their past 10 games, limiting a lot of chances and things like that, whereas Boston's not really been able to score a ton of power play goals, hitting about 11% over their last 10. You kind of have to watch out for this. Their offensive opportunities have been less. Again, it's not like a goalie's been out there just keeping the puck out of the back of the net. They've just had less offensive opportunities. And Toronto is a team where their PK percentage has risen in the past few games. So with this, you have a series matchup with one side maybe going to be able to be on a heater in regards to with them being in the box and Boston just being a little bit in a goalless situation. Now, the great news is for the Bruins is out of their 4 games that they played against the Maple Leafs, they scored 3 power play goals and it looks like as of late they may have been able to figure them out. They have, in that third game that they played against them, a period where they played just over 3 minutes on the man advantage. They had 8 shots on that time and had a single goal. The second game they had more goals, but I really liked from what I saw there in that third game, if they're able to say that they have been able to figure it out, then Jim Montgomery's guys are going to have a little bit of an easier time to be able to take advantage of something that over the course of the whole season has been a little bit of a heel or a thorn in the side of Toronto's heel. And the third talking point is going to be the amount of pressure on both teams in this series. Looking at both sides, original 6 teams that have performed well in the regular season, but in the playoffs, things haven't really been up to code. Boston's been a really good team over the past 6 or 7 years with a ton of 100-plus point seasons, of course winning the President's Trophy, but 5 out of the past 6 seasons, they've not gone very far. In fact, they've only made it to the Stanley Cup Final once in that time. With a lot of first-round exits, you're looking at the past 4 years, things have not gone well, as they were knocked out in the first 2 years in the second round, in the past 2 years in the first round, last year being an incredibly painful loss as they won the President's Trophy, were one of the greatest hockey teams in the regular season in NHL history, only to be knocked out by the Panthers after they held a 3-1 series lead. It's not just the guys that are on this team now, but you know that there is just so much pressure playing in a market like that, and also for a guy like Brad Marchand, he knows pressure's probably on him as well, as you're comparing him to Bergeron, Krejci, Chara, Rask. A lot of these players are able to see postseason success, and yes, they failed in moments as well too as a team, but you don't want to be seen as one of those players that was part of both eras, and the second era you weren't able to have an impact and to be able to say, well, we had postseason success without them. And then you have the Toronto Maple Leafs. We all know the story here. A lot of the kids that were the baby Leafs saw a lot of playoff failure, and it wasn't until last year they were able to finally crack through the first round before losing painfully in the second round as well against the Panthers as they went on to the Stanley Cup Final. Still, it wasn't something that you would say you were thrilled about, but you could at least say that the drought is over. I see a lot of the rage it was building in Toronto fans, and it was getting wild just to see some of the comments. Maybe the pressure's off this team a little bit, knowing that they can go out there and at least say we made it out of the first round on one occasion, but you'd like to do it back-to-back years. But I know in the NHL, you will compare players to other players that are really good. Sidney Crosby had 3 championships by the time he was 30. None of these guys are able to say they've even played in a conference final game. Not saying that that is right or wrong to compare players, but that's just how it works in the sports world. And you know that Leafs fans are especially hoping that this year they can break through. Sheldon Keefe is especially hoping that this year they can get on a deep run to make things a little bit easier for him. Either way though, again, looking at this, the pressure is unreal, and I'd hate to be the team that is on the losing side of this series. So overall, what are my thoughts on this series? I gotta be honest, we're in for a treat here. You know, anytime these two teams meet, the fan bases are gonna be going rabid. This is the third time that they've met in the playoffs in the past 7 years. It has been a minute since the last postseason series happened against them, but it's going to be filled with a lot of passion, and you know both of these teams know each other relatively well. The Bruins are going to be favored as they had the better regular season and went undefeated against the Leafs in the regular season as well too. But I am just looking at this and thinking that this is going to be about as fun as it gets if this is a good series. Look for there to be overreactions in the first game or two though. Let's say one team goes down 2-0, they're going to say it's over, or if there's a blowout even in game 1, you know how it works, especially with the Toronto media. It's going to be something that you just got to bury if you're the team of whoever is losing early on in the series. So for this series, who am I going to be picking? I'm going to be picking the Toronto Maple Leafs in 7 games. This feels like something that I shouldn't be doing. Boston, again, like I said, able to have a better year and had the Leafs number, if you will. But looking at this, I think every year, a lot of people make a cautious pick in the playoffs for a lot of their picks, especially in the first round, and I am guilty of that. But this season, I think this is one of those series that could go either way, which is why I'm saying it could go to 7 games. The Leafs have that gut feeling for me. They're able to get the job done then, and both teams didn't finish out the year incredibly hot. But I like the Leafs roster a little bit more, and I think part of that too could be the fact that I've undervalued the Bruins basically the entirety of the channel. Not saying that I thought they'd be bad. I've said multiple years, hey, they should be able to get to the playoffs. But something just feels right with this Toronto team being able to get the job done yet again. There's red flags everywhere. I probably should be ignoring myself, but here we are picking the Leafs in this series. Boston, if they win it, they probably could and very well should win this series. I just got to go out there and I got to pick one upset, if you will. And one thing I did see when I took notes in this series was the fact that the Bruins did seem to struggle in neutral zone play. Maybe Toronto can take advantage of that. They are a good team at getting zone entries. Like I said, if they get settled in your end, there could be a lot of problems. I'm not exactly sure how things are going to go here, as it could just be totally different from what we've seen with regular season stats. Again, Matthews is a player that will be able to go off. There's so many good players in this. It's not just Matthews, it's not just Pasternak, a slew of different players. They're going to go out there and have a big series, and hopefully we get a long series with competitive games. Anyway, though, what are your thoughts on this playoff matchup? Do you think that the Bruins or the Leafs will win? Tell me who and in how many games. Make sure to like this video also as well, and subscribe if you're new. Everybody also make sure to click on the playlist at the end of this video if you're interested in other series previews, as I'm going to be getting those out over the course of tonight and tomorrow. But everybody, please stay safe. Have a great night. Eagle of Hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.